What's up, everybody?
Hey, what's going on?
Welcome to Mental Episode 6. And we have a very special episode today with a very special boy.
I love how you use boy instead of man. Thanks, Mitch. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So this is Josh.
Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here. It's nice to see you boys again. I haven't seen you in what?
It's
8.5, 9 months now?
it might even be longer than that, right?
I left August 17th and it's April 27th.
So Josh used to work with us, but he...
I used to work for you, Mitch, and
That's
I used to
true.
work with him.
Okay, sure. But
Josh is very exact.
he is. You went to Australia. He also, when he worked for me, he left about once every 3 months to go on vacation for 2 months.
He was very popular with management.
I'm pretty sure, I don't think they liked me, but there was a point where I did not work more than 4 weeks in a row without leaving to go somewhere on vacation, more or less.
Well, I was your biggest cheerleader with that.
I know you are.
Yeah.
We had a lot of
I
good
think we all,
conversations.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I think you should be leaving and going places. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you went to Australia, so that's why we haven't seen Josh. And this is like literally the first time we've seen Josh in what the fuck?
It's been about a year almost, right?
Well, like I said, I left August 17th, so we had the little get-together had to be August 14th, 15th, or whatever. I don't remember. And now it's April 27th, I believe. So, yeah, it's been, what, 8.5 months? It's been 8.5
so
months?
You're right about that.
Yeah, it's been about, because I've been back about 2.5 months now.
That's weird. And we still like Josh.
I can't believe you guys still like me.
You know what's really crazy?
What's that?
Josh and I play a lot of Xbox together, or we used to. We did not play Xbox one single time when you were in Australia.
You know, it's funny you bring that up because there were many times where I would text you and be like, Mitchell, let's play some Xbox. Mitch,
Yeah,
let's
but there
play
was,
some Xbox.
a 14-hour time difference between
man.
the two
Yeah,
places.
that's true.
Because you were messaging me too to play some Overwatch, and I was like, dude, I'm going to bed.
You know, I also tried to keep it where it was like Saturday at like 2 p.m. So it'd be like Friday night at 10 a.m. here.
Oh.
So I could kind of catch you, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But that's all right.
Well, we worked a lot of weird hours last year around that time too.
Yeah, we
so
were doing the
it's-
overnights.
Was that the streak of the 4 months overnights that you guys
I
did?
believe so.
Yeah.
That was
Okay.
while you were gone. So.
Yeah. Okay. I
How's
remember
our
that.
volumes, by the way? Are they looking pretty good?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't really look at the screen. They're fine.
Okay. As long as they're fine, that's fine with me.
I think they're fine.
Okay.
So, Josh, tell us. You went down to Australia.
Yep.
And then also the year before you did a huge trip with your dad.
Yes.
And so I think we start with that huge trip with your dad.
It would go chronological
Go
order.
chron- chronological order?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what can you give us some good highlights of your awesome western bound trip through California and the rest of the states over there?
I'll start with a little bit of background just to fill in the details. So, I finished my master's degree in May of 21, and at the time I was kind of contemplating. I was like, I kind of want to do this road trip. I kind of want to go to California. I'd never been out west. I'm originally from the Midwest, but I lived on the East Coast all my life, and so I was like,
You're from the Midwest?
I was born in Kansas.
No shit.
I was born just outside of Kansas City. Yeah.
Interesting.
And you're not
over-
a Kansas City Royals fan?
I am not. Overland Park, Kansas. No, my dad is a Baltimore Orioles fan, and my mother is a diehard Red Sox fan. So we get quite the AL East split in my house. And my
Wow.
brother roots for the Yankees, so...
Holy
That's
crap!
just-
You guys want to kill each other?
Yeah, well...
Especially this year, right?
Yeah.
It'll be even better for you because my mother's parents, my grandparents, rest their souls, my grandfather was a Yankees fan, and my grandmother was a Red Sox fan. So they used to go at it, like, almost every year.
That's how my family is.
Yeah,
My
so-
whole family is Red Sox, Yankee fans.
Yeah, and so my mother grew up a Red Sox fan, and her brother's a Red Sox fan, and then her older brother, because she has two brothers, is a Yankees fan. So rest in peace to him too. But yeah, there was a lot of baseball button heads in that house growing up.
My brother is a Yankees fan. Neither of my brothers really watch baseball, but my one brother is similar to me, where he just wants chaos. So he always pretended to be a Yankees fan all throughout like our childhood. And there was in 2004. See, I remember this like vividly because I remember them winning the World Series in 2004. But in 2004, when the Red Sox were down 3 games to none, my dad actually locked my brother's much older than me because I was very young in 2004. My brother's much older than me. My dad actually locked my brother out of the house on the front porch during the game that they were down 3-0.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Child abuse.
Did he lock him out for the preceding 3 games after that too?
No, he only locked him out for like a very short period of time, but
Okay.
he was like rubbing his face like, oh, this is the last game. This is gonna be the last game of the series, and he locked him out on the front porch.
Got what he deserved then.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of funny because, like I was saying, my parents are an AL East and my brother is a Yankees fan. I actually started rooting for the Detroit Tigers to kind of stay out of that mess because I went to a Tigers game in 2006. I actually have a baseball signed by Maglio Ordonez. Probably a name you haven't heard in a while.
That's a cool name.
But yeah, it was and I still think it's a cool name.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it's an
He's a
awesome
great
name.
great
Yeah,
ball player.
he was a great right fielder back in the day too. Yeah. So I have a baseball signed by Maglio Ordonez. So I still root for the Tigers, even though they've been kind of dog water the past
Irrelevant.
decade.
All right,
They've been irrelevant.
Yep.
But yeah.
I'm sorry, I derailed you a little bit.
No, I went off on a tangent, so that's my bad. But yeah, no, I was finishing up. Back to my story. I would finish up graduation in May of 21, and I said, you know what? I just said the hell with it. And long story short, my dad said, look, he said, it's going to cost you this amount of money to go and do this. How about this? He goes, I'll go with you for the first month, and we'll drive out there. And at first, I was a little hesitant because I'm very independent and tend to do all that sort of stuff by myself. And then my dad has a saying, he goes, I'm going to sleep on it. So I said, Dad, I'm going to go and sleep on it. I woke up the next morning and I was like, unlimited mileage, extra money, because my dad would help me out pay for things and he'd be a good companion to get across the Midwest. And I said, why not? So we went. So we left about 5 weeks after he said he'd come with me. And we started out in New York. First day we drove to Indianapolis, 13 hours straight from upstate New York. And then from Indianapolis on to Kansas City was another 12, and then through St. Louis. So we stopped in St. Louis. Then we drove from Kansas City to Roswell, New Mexico, and went alien hunting for the first time out west. That was.
Are you part of that subreddit, the alien subreddit?
I'm not a part of it, but I've been on there.
I've been
on there.
perusing it more and more, actually.
I went on there after you talked about it, episode 3. I was like, let me go have a look at this again because I used to watch the History Channel, and especially on H2, they used to have Ancient Aliens on a lot, just reruns of Ancient Aliens. So I used to watch some reruns and just kind of laugh at it because of the old meme and all that. But I did go and scroll through the Alien subreddit and had a good chuckle. But yeah, it's pretty interesting when you pull into Roswell and, the Dunkin' Donuts is an alien sign and,
Is that actually what it looks like?
Yeah,
that's cool.
There's an alien sign, and
I like that they bought in.
If I remember correctly, the alien and he's got his arms up like above him, like he's scoring a touchdown, and in between his hands it says Dunkin' Donuts.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the McDonald's sign's the same way; it's an alien sign. But yeah, that's when we started.
Good for
And
that. I'd buy into all that shit
Oh,
so
that-
fast.
dude.
If I was like a business there, I'd be all about aliens. Everything would be aliens.
oh, dude, it was wild. They got like those like old like political lawn signs. They got them like cut out like an aliens, and they just post them down the sidewalk. Like they buy into that 100%.
They have to.
Oh yeah, they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Roswell's just a little town in the middle of nowhere. People go there to go to the Alien Museum.
So you mentioned you went to Kansas City as well. Did you guys go to the old stopping grounds?
We did. We went by the house that I was born in, that I lived in as a little kid in Overland Park, and my parents met at the NCAA when the NCAA headquarters were in Kansas City before they moved to Indianapolis in 1999, I believe it was. So we went back to the old headquarters and saw a few of the old friends, and yeah, it was good to see the house that I was born in. So that was pretty cool. So
That's cool.
was as a 24-year-old kid at the time, or 23, excuse me. It was a nice little little part to see of my my history that I had never seen before.
How long did the trip take you, like, overall?
To get out west, it took us about 3 days. My dad and I spent 27 days together, and I spent 81 days driving the country in total.
Oh, so you were there. That's a long
Yeah.
time.
I
So did he go to like Yellowstone and stuff with you?
No, so the furthest north he made it was actually Lake Tahoe, because we cut through the Midwest on our way to like Arizona and stuff.
Yeah.
So we did Grand Canyon and all that. We went up and did Death Valley through Vegas, Tucson, the whole bit, all that in Arizona. We then drove across to California and did LA. and then we went up north through like Sequoia and Kings Canyon and stuff, and we ended up through San Francisco. He used to live in Sonoma, so he got to go back to where he used to live in the 80s. And then we cut inland and did Yosemite. Yosemite was the last part that he did with me, and then I dropped him in Reno, and he jumped on a flight home.
He flew back.
Dumped your dad in Reno.
Well, yeah, that's.
I think it's just funny.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. But yeah, I left him at the airport in Reno, and then that was after we did Lake Tahoe, and then I continued north, and he flew home.
I love Lake Tahoe. Like, love it. It's one of my favorite places in the country.
It's really it's quite awe-inspiring out there because it's quite unique because you're just like you're over in like Carson City and whatnot, and it's just like flat lands and whatever, and then you go up over Route 50 up over the mountains, and you come down, and there's just this giant lake, and you're
it's
like,
like
holy crap.
Blue.
It's very blue.
It's just blue.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the views around it and everything are beautiful. Did you go to Mount Rose at all?
I did not go to Mount Rose.
Like, we literally, and it was such like a wild thing. Like when we went, it was such like a crazy thing because we went in like I think July, and we went to Mount Rose, snowboarded Mount Rose
In July.
and then went right down
It
to.
must have been a good snow year.
Yeah.
I really think it was July. It was like because we snowboarded like right down, finished snowboarding
Yeah.
for the day, drove to Lake Tahoe, and we were swimming in Lake Tahoe. It was one of the like craziest like days of my life. Like we were in bathing suits and everything like
Yeah.
half the day, and we were snowboarding the other half of the day.
It's kind of awesome.
It was really awesome.
That's
We'll
kind
be
of
able
awesome.
to do that this year for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of snow up there.
Is there
year.
really?
Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of rain, so I bet you a lot of that's frozen.
There's like 11 feet or something
Holy
in some
crap.
spots.
Oh, way more.
Uh,
There
at
was,
my aunt and uncle's house. There's like 11 feet,
yeah.
I think.
There was places where 50 or more.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah,
Whoa.
like my cousin was sending me pictures of like they had like the snow was up above their doors.
I would
Like at their
I would
house.
imagine that if you went and had like someone took a picture today, there's probably still quite a bit.
I bet.
One of the weirdest things to me about Lake Tahoe is when you're driving on the Nevada side, you're just like driving down like Route 50 towards South Lake Tahoe, and it's just like Caesars, Harrah's, whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you get to the California line, and you see the Welcome to California, and there's nothing.
Gone. Yeah.
You know, there's
Well,
like
there's a lot of smaller businesses, a lot of like restaurants.
Oh,
and
yeah.
places to stay overnight and all that. But I know what you're talking about.
yeah, you know what I mean though. It's like weird where you go from the 5 to 10 to 20 story like casinos, and then you see Welcome to California,
literally just
and it's
cuts
just
off. Yeah,
it's just like it's really weird.
Yeah.
Lucky it's still there with all the fires they've had.
Oh, I know, and that's kind of what I was worried about too, because I kept going up north like through Oregon, and that's when they were having their really bad fires in Central Oregon, like up near Mount Hood and stuff, and you could just see the smoke pillaring across. When I went up to Mount Rainier, and once you get high enough, you can look down and just see pillars of smoke, like in southern Washington. It's weird.
That's crazy.
It's really weird. So it's kind of alarming at one.
Well, I would say very.
It's really alarming, but at the same time, it's I don't mean this because fires are very destructive, but it's very unique. I mean, it can be really unique to see, you know, these floating clouds across, not in a good way, obviously.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
But it's nature's process, you know. It burns, it heals, and it restores, and so it's kind
I
of
don't think
unique.
it's not nature's process when people are throwing gender reveal parties.
That's true. In that case, it's not, but that's true. That from the gender
You
reveal
better
parties.
clean that up a little bit and say what you mean by that, because I'm not sure of the reference myself.
The large one, the like huge one that
In
happened
California
2 or 3
was a
years
gender
ago
reveal
was a gender
party.
reveal party.
You're kidding? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe it was fire. They lit off fireworks, right?
blue fireworks.
Yeah,
and they burned down half of 3 fucking states.
In California.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember
Wow.
that. Yeah.
You know what's really interesting to me, because I'm from out there, listening to you guys talk about it, because to me, wildfires are just like
Well, you got to think
that
about it.
happens.
Like there's no, there.
Right.
I mean, obviously there's been
but
wildfires.
so I grew up with that sort of thing, and so it's not
Yeah.
unique to
Yeah.
me. It's just
It's just part of it.
terrible, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting hearing
Yeah.
your viewpoint.
That's like when I grew up in Kansas. I don't remember a lot of it, but you know, it's like, oh, there's going to be a tornado that touchdowns. It's like, oh, all right, let's go chill in the basement for an hour. You know,
right.
it's kind of the same thing.
Like I don't remember. Like we've never really. I mean, like I said, there's forest fires here occasionally, but they're
Right.
not ever anything like that.
Gosh, no.
ever. There's like brush fires really here.
There will be in the future.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a dry season, but the issue. I mean, it's very wet here always.
Yeah.
And it even with in the future, I think it's still going to be pretty wet here.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
but we we don't have much inclement weather here. We're in a pretty decent spot.
Oh, you're 100% right.
Yeah,
there.
there's no earthquakes.
Like
There's
if you look at like maps of the future, they say that this is one of the safest areas in the United States.
Really?
Well, there's no.
Sense.
In my entire life here, I remember 2 tornadoes. There's really more or less no forest fires.
Right.
Flooding is the worst thing, and even flooding is not that bad. The worst flood that we had was during
Irene, I believe.
Irene, yeah. And Sandy too was.
Oh yeah,
bad.
Sandy was before that. That's right.
But realistically, there's not much going on weather-wise up where we're from. So forest fires, I remember seeing videos and stuff, especially on Reddit, where they're not filtered really at all.
Yes.
Some of the forest fire videos and stuff are insane.
I know which one you're talking about, where it's like walks
literally
out
like
and it's
you're walking
orange.
through hell.
Yeah. It's like you're on Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nuts.
So, your Yellowstone trip, all that stuff. So, if you were to kind of sum up for somebody else that wanted, someone else from the East Coast want to go to the West Coast, to go on a trip, what would you tell them? What sort of things that they should be looking to do?
That's a good question, because there's so many different angles you could attack that from.
Yeah.
For me, I was fortunate enough to get the best of both worlds, because at the time I was kind of finishing my degree. I was not a retiring student, but I was a finishing student, and I was
Josh was a vagrant.
I was there we go. I was finishing my academic career, and I kind of had some time, and I was still part-time, worked the same place for 4 years, so I knew the management knew me, and so I had that going for me, and I said, I'm gonna just do this as big as I can. So I grew up in the suburbs around cities, and I've always been, I don't want to call myself a city kid, but I'm not, I like the outdoors, but I don't hunt, I don't fish or any of that. So at first I was going to go and just kind of see the cities in the West Coast. I was going to go up and do Seattle and come down through Portland and San Francisco and San Diego and then over and across. And originally I was going to rent a car, and then, plans changed, and my dad came and he's like, I'll go with you. And I said, all right. And we decided to turn it into a national parks tour. And eventually he and I ended up getting through 13 together, I believe it was. And I ended up doing 31 by myself.
Wow. I didn't realize you hit that many.
I hit 31.
So you did 50, 44. My math was a little off there. You did 44 national parks?
31. No, he did 13 out of 31 with me.
Oh, so you did 31. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Still, though.
It's still a ton, yes.
I did 31 total, so I almost hit half, because last I checked on the National Park Service, there's 63 of them, so I've been to half, just under half of them.
That's impressive,
That's really cool. So what's, out of everything you went to, what was your favorite thing on that trip?
On that trip?
Actually, let's separate it, to be fair. What's the favorite thing on the trip with your dad?
Yep.
And what's the favorite thing on the trip overall?
My favorite
Or
thing
by yourself, I guess.
on the trip with my dad was probably, he really enjoyed Yosemite. He loved Yosemite.
I asked what yours was, Josh.
I'm going to get to it, Mitch. I'm going to get to it. He loved Yosemite, and I loved San Francisco. So I'm going to say that Northern California corridor, for me, was my favorite thing. I liked Yosemite, but I know he loved it, and I really, really liked San Francisco. And he used to live in Sonoma. And I really enjoyed San Francisco personally. So I'd probably say that Northern California corridor there between San Francisco and Yosemite in through Lake Tahoe was probably my favorite. My favorite on the whole trip was probably, from a national parks perspective, it would be Grand Teton in Wyoming. It was incredible. And Olympic National Park were the two for me that stuck out.
Wow.
And then cities, I would probably say San Francisco. And I quite like Seattle as well. I quite enjoyed Seattle. I really did. My uncle used to live there, and it was, it's nice up there. The lifestyle is very active and the whole bit, and nature's just beautiful up there. Washington State is beautiful.
If you were to do it, if you went again, not like you have your previous experiences. If you go again, would you do the same stuff, or would you try to do completely different things?
I'd probably do a bit of both. I hit a lot of the national parks that I wanted to go to, but I'd probably do a few of the same things and a few new ones. So, for example, I didn't get to Redwoods in Northern California. I'd like to go to Redwoods National Park.
I got to tell you, it's amazing.
Is it?
I went there in
I've heard like
1990.
Yeah.
In 1990,
that's
I think.
a while ago.
Oh, yeah, that's a long time ago. But I remember it vividly. It was it really makes an impression upon
awesome.
me. Yeah.
The only issue I have, which like people can comment if we're completely wrong, because I have not been there. I've heard it's not as nice anymore. Like,
I guess it depends on how you look at it, right?
Yeah. Because that's my understanding. Because that's the only, like, I also that's something that I really want to see, and I'm just, I don't know, kind of hesitant on it because I've heard it's not as nice as it once was.
I wouldn't worry about that so much because it would still be new to you.
That's true.
Right? So a lot of people that are saying that are people that have been going there for so many years.
That's a good point.
You'll go up there and you go, this is like, wow.
That's a good point.
Yep. The predicament for me with Redwoods is that it's the opposite direction of Lake Tahoe. And so at the time when my dad and I left, we didn't have his return flight. And so I was looking up, I was kind of like, okay, Sequoia versus Redwoods, can I swing both? But it ultimately didn't work out that way because when we got to Kansas City, I believe it was, we booked his flight and he was like, I'm going to go out of Reno. So, and I was like, okay, we got to go to Tahoe now. So we ended up going inland versus towards the coast because Redwoods is on the coast. So a lot of people on Reddit especially seem to draw comparisons between Sequoia and Redwoods. So I figured if I hit one instead of both, I'd be okay at the time. But I would still like to go back and see Redwoods. And Sequoia was great. So... But I ended up going inland instead of going to Redwoods. But I feel like I would do a mix. Once I got to Arizona, I started zigzagging a little bit. So, like, for example, like when we got to Flagstaff, and then, you go over to Vegas, up through the Grand Canyon, and then you go down to Death Valley, and then down through Los Angeles, and then you zigzag back to Sequoia, and you go to Kings Canyon, and then you go out to Bakersfield and up to San Francisco, and you start zigzagging. So there was a little bit of that going on. So I, at least in California, covered as much as I could. California's a big state.
It's a lot bigger than you think.
Oh my God. People don't realize how big California really is. It's, especially north to south even, it's nuts. Like, it's nuts. Like, it's going to take you a full, 16 hours to get from San Diego to, to the border.
We made a lot of trips from Reno back down to LA, back and forth. And it's minimum 8-hour drive.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It actually blew my mind how big that state is, because even from Death Valley to LA is like 5-6 hours.
Yeah,
and that's just from the inside of the state. So you're coming from Vegas, it's got to be 7-8 hours. It's nuts.
Well, think about it. If you rotate that over to the East Coast, you're going past North Carolina and South Carolina and all that stuff.
That probably gets you to Florida.
Yeah, it would get you close.
Yeah.
From where we are, like if you start at the top, in fact, I would probably get you well into Florida.
I would probably, in my opinion, just thinking off the top of my head, I think it'd get you into the Panhandle of Florida.
It probably would.
I think it would. So, but California, it's, California
overpriced, has too much weed now.
It's John. It's funny you mentioned that
because no such thing.
Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, exactly. California gets all its heat, and I like to say there's the 2 T's of California: Teslas and traffic. But for California, for all the heat that it gets, for its taxes and its overpriced, it's one of the most ecologically diverse states in the country.
Yeah.
Like, you can start out in Southern California, San Diego, you're on the Tijuana border there, and it's pretty desert. And then, you work your way inland, the Mojave, Death Valley's right there. And, you get over to the coast and you end up in the Sierra Nevadas. And the further north you go, the more temperate it gets. And then, you cross into Yosemite and you're right on the Nevada border there, and it's still the Sierra Nevadas. And then you get real north and it starts to plateau a little bit. And it's a little bit of everything.
There's actually a trail, the Pacific Coast Trail. You probably read that.
I've heard of it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it goes all the way, from the various, from Mexico all the way up to Canada.
Yeah.
And they say that if you try to walk it, I think it's like a 6 months journey.
Which is so crazy because we're planning the Taconic Crest hike. Dude, it's 3 days and it's like our whole state.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's not the whole state, obviously, but it's like you do a good portion of our area.
Mitch is going to be ragged.
I already am. What are you talking about? Look at me.
Yeah. He looks like a mountain man. He's going to look more like one after that.
It's only 3 days. It's not going to change that much.
Yeah. And you talk to some of the people out there too, John. I'm sure you've experienced this a little bit, but they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go for a hike." And you're like, "Oh, how long is the hike?" And they're like, "Oh, it's 70 miles." And you're like, "Excuse me, what now?"
Yeah, like that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're doing a 70-mile one, and we're like preparing for it.
Yeah, and these guys just go out on a Saturday afternoon and like, "Oh, let me go hike 70 miles and I'll see you on Monday morning, honey." And it's like, okay.
You get used to anything, right?
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
Well, so that's cool. I mean, that's what a great trip, right?
Yeah.
And then a year later, you decide, screw it, I'm gonna go to Australia and try to find a job.
Yes.
Well, you did.
Intern.
Yeah. Internship.
So I get back in August and I'm kind of like, all right, what the hell am I going to do now? And, you know, there were rumors at the time that then Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison was going to open the borders for the first time in a year and a half. And, you know, I was feeling pretty optimistic. And I had
that was because of COVID, right?
Yes.
You're not supposed to say
That was
C word, John.
that was from COVID.
They hate it.
We'll cut it out.
Okay.
Yeah. So then Prime Minister Scott Morrison said he was going to open the borders finally. After a couple long years of being in lockdown. At that point, it would have been a year and a half. And Australia got the nickname as Fort Australia, much like Fort Sumter or something, because, you know, nobody could go out, nobody could come in. And it was a little bit of a unique scenario for them. And talking to my future colleagues at that point about it. And but yeah, that was August. And then March comes around and Scott Morrison goes on air and goes, borders are going to be open in April. And my old boss at Syracuse used to live in Sydney and had some connections, and I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, look, I still need this internship to get my degree. If I could go down to Australia, I'd love that." And he said, "Let me put some calls in." And about a week goes by, and he goes, "Here's your contact. Reach out and see what you can do." And so I did. And a couple days later, he goes, "Yeah, we'd love to have you. Come down whenever you can." And that was April 21st, and I applied for my visa on April 22nd of 2022, and it took about a month, just over a month for it to come back.
That actually seems pretty quick.
It was quick.
Is there like an average time on that?
The time, from what I remember, it said 5 to 60 days.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was about it.
Within the average.
Yeah, it was about average. And Mitch, I still remember where I was and where we were and where I was standing. And I remember John turned the corner and we were at our place of employment. And I saw the email come through. It was about 10:30 on May 23rd. And it said, "Your visa's been granted." And yeah, I still remember that. And I remember, I remember the back door being open and the whole bit. And yeah, the five of us were there. And May 23rd it was. And then I got my flight booked June 1st after we got that sorted out, and I ended up moving down August 17th, and then that was that. So,
and by the way, that you had such a cool spot.
Oh my god, it was sick.
Holy shit!
I believe
we should actually show a picture of that.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. Yeah. We could show the stock footage.
Yeah, we'll throw it in there.
We'll throw the stock footage in there.
Up. Yeah.
But yeah,
Just
I believe
a pad.
It was a pad. As the Aussies call it, it was a damn good flat. So I believe it was episode 3. Mitch said Reddit is an incredible place, and he could not be more correct. Because I don't know if I've told you the story, John, but that's actually how I got my apartment. Was from a user off Reddit. So,
where were you specifically? Like, were you on, what subreddit were you on?
I just went on the Melbourne subreddit. So I lived in Melbourne, which is it's in Victoria. It's the southern state of Australia. And no, for the record, it's not Melbourne. It's Melbourne.
Didn't know that.
Melbin is basically how you're supposed to pronounce it.
I'm going to keep calling it Melbourne, I'm sure.
Okay. So I lived in Melbourne.
We'll get more views now from Australia.
Yeah, they're telling you in the comments how incorrect you two are. But yeah, I was perusing the Melbourne subreddit because I had put in some calls to agents, and they were like, "You don't have any rental history, and you're 17,000 kilometers away," because, you know, they're on the metric system. And it's not the same here where you can just say, "Oh, look at my, 800 credit score and let me have this apartment." You know, they value rental history a lot higher than they do credit. And they also have a little bit different system how that works compared to us.
I was gonna say, how do you get? I don't mean to like change the subject. Well, it's not really change the subject. How do you get rental history if you can't rent places? Like if you're living in Australia.
Well, that's kind of the problem is you run into, especially in my area. So what a lot of or in my position, excuse me. So what a lot of younger kids do is the housing in the universities down there is separate, so they can list their university housing as
apartment.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's what one of my colleagues did. She was telling me about it because I asked her the same question. I was like, "How do you do that?" She's like, "Well, they often count your university history and blah 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 because it's usually separate and the system's different. I don't know too much about the system versus the private and public that we have here." So I put a post on the Melbourne subreddit. I was like, "Hey, listen, anybody renting a room or have an apartment for 6 months? You know, I'm at the time I was 24. You know, an American coming down. Blah 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 blah." And one of the first replies was, "My husband and I are looking to rent out our apartment because we're moving to Adelaide, which is a neighboring city about 550 miles west of Melbourne in South Australia." And then she's like, "I'll DM you." And I was like, "Oh, great." And so then I connected with her. Later find out that she's from a suburb of DC and she got married and moved down there. And I don't know how I got the place and passed all their checks, but I did. And I ended up getting the apartment, and it was close enough where I could walk. It was 2 miles from my office, and it was a great spot. I couldn't have been luckier. So I had 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms all to myself, and probably a little bit too much space, but my landlords were great. So I still keep in touch with them to this day. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I still send them memes and stuff, Australian memes off Reddit or Family Guy clips of Australians that I see that I'll send to them and just be like,
maybe give them maybe contact them before we release this, and then we can always put in a link in there if they would like.
Yeah, if they're still trying to rent.
They're not.
Oh, they're not.
They're not. They got somebody else filling it.
Okay.
I do know that. I do know that. Yeah, they had somebody come in about a week after I left.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that makes sense because that place. There's no way that's not a pop.
We saw that and we went, holy crap!
Wild.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that place was that I could not have asked for a better place to stay. So
that's it's actually a lot of good information because I'm sure there's a lot of people that like to travel would like to travel to Australia, maybe spend some time down there.
At some point.
I would love to. Right?
Yeah.
And if you're gonna go down there, you should probably go for like a month.
Yeah, you gotta go for a little while.
Well, that's the tricky part is a lot of people struggle to make that trip because of the time difference. So I got a little bit lucky because I was there for 6 months, but you lose 2 days when you go down there because you leave Los Angeles and it's right now I believe it's in 17-hour time difference. It's a 15-hour flight to Sydney, and you're going across the daytime border that way. You're going west, so you're crossing it, so you're getting to the start of it because New Zealand's obviously on the front of the Earth's rotation with the way that it works, and so you actually lose. I lost 32 hours going down there. I left LA at 11 p.m. And I landed at 7:30 a.m. 2 days later.
Yeah, I remember you sending a text message to the group chat, I think, and I went, and he's like, "I just landed." I'm like, "Shit, Josh left like 4 days ago."
Crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. It was quite unique. The fact that August 18th kind of didn't exist for me. I was probably somewhere along the dateline border there, but yeah, that day didn't really exist. And then I left 11:30 p.m. August 17th, and next thing I know, it's 8:30 on August 19th, and I'm like, what the hell happened? So that was a good time.
So, what are some of the bigger cultural differences that you see between here and there?
Australia is very Western. It's very... You don't see very many, John, to be honest. It's... Australia is... For those of you that don't know, a very broad history. It was a former prison colony of the British Empire. Excuse me. So they ended up sending a lot of Westerners down there and the whole bit. And, there's the old saying, the sun never set on the British Empire. And, that was pretty true if you look at it historically. But Australia, to me, it's like you're going to the UK. I didn't find a whole lot of cultural differences outside of, the language and, Australians use a lot of slang and They throw around some phrases that kind of make you think twice, and some words that kind of make you go.
Like what?
Why?
Give us some examples.
Don't give us any examples.
No, like good stuff. Keep it clean, but yeah.
Yeah.
Thong. I know what you're. I know what both of our minds immediately went to.
Yeah, I'm not going to say.
But thongs are
so yes,
flip flops.
Yes,
sandals.
thongs are flip flops, and it's funny because when you go to New Zealand, they're called jankles. So like when I went to New Zealand, and I was like, I spent Christmas in New Zealand. It was probably the greatest 2 weeks ever. But I spent time in New Zealand, and I was wearing sneakers, and it was starting to get warm out. It was getting to the mid-70s, 80s, whatever. And I was like, do I have time to go throw some thongs on? And you just kind of saw people look around and go, what did he just say? And she goes, it's not that kind of party, sweetheart. And I was like, oh, that's not what I'm talking about. Because I was getting ready to go out on a boat, and we were going to do a lake tour. And I was like, oh, I meant flip-flops. And she goes, they're jankles. And I was like, okay.
Jankles?
Yeah.
Oh, what a weird one.
Yeah, it's very
well,
strange.
Well, thong is weird, too.
Yeah, but...
I mean, it isn't. Like, it's weird to us, because we use.
I'll still be saying that too. So
you shouldn't.
I know, because people think I'm back in New Zealand.
I'm gonna wear my jankles.
Yeah,
it's awesome. I'm gonna use that. I don't care. I'm gonna say that to my wife. Just make me nuts.
Dude, I used to hate, and this is just within the United States. I used to work out of an ice cream truck and do ice cream stuff, and I used to hate when people came up and said they wanted Jimmy's on their ice cream, and it was, dude, it took me 3 months of working on an ice cream truck. Every single time I was like, the fuck did you just say? Like, what the hell is that?
I don't even know what it is.
Sprinkles. It's sprinkles.
They call them Jimmy's?
Jimmy's.
Really?
Why?
Yeah.
Do you know what the etymology of that is?
I have no clue, but they're Jimmy's.
Jimmy's.
And people would come up, especially, dude, because we did one festival, the one that's up there. We did a festival in North Carolina. Shut up. We did a festival in North Carolina, and 85% of the people came up and asked for Jimmy's. And it took me the whole 3-day festival before I was finally like, what?
I think we need to open up an ice cream store right now and then offer Jimmy's.
It's just a weird...
That's like when people would ask me if I wanted tomato sauce with my fries, and I'd be like, what?
People call ketchup tomato sauce?
Yeah, it's called tomato sauce.
What's tomato sauce?
Pasta sauce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they shorten all kinds of words down there too. So like breakfast is brekkie.
They're busy. They don't have time to say full words.
No, you're exactly right.
Breakfast is brekkie.
Yeah, brekkie. Instead of the trunk, they say throw it in the boot.
That's common, I think, across a couple different places.
I think that's more European too. I believe.
I've never heard that one.
Another one that kind of came to me was one of the first tournaments I was working. We were taking down all of the signage and stuff because I work for a sport marketing firm, and we did a tournament in Sydney. And I was like, "Are we taking this to the dump?" And he goes, "You mean throwing it in the tip?" And I was like, "Yeah."
In the what?
They call it in the tip.
I don't think you can say that on here.
No.
So back it up a little bit because it just sounds so wild. So
they call
you're going to the junkyard. Is that what you said?
Yeah, or like the dump, or you're like going to like you're going to the dump. They call it the tip. You're gonna go throw that in the tip.
Why?
I don't know.
TIP?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's look weird. That one up or something.
Yeah, in the tip, they say I'm gonna go toss this in the tip.
Don't they use taking a piss a lot too?
Yeah,
taking the piss.
Taking the piss, very British. Yeah, I'm just taking the piss, mate.
Yeah.
It's the.
Okay. Yeah, taking the piss. Yeah, it means you're essentially you're joking around or you're busting their balls.
Oh. Okay.
Taking the piss. It's very British.
It's very interesting how dialects change.
Look how much crap we've taught our viewers already, just in the last 5 minutes.
I've learned a lot.
Australian slang. Yeah. And then obviously, they call everybody mate, and I still do that.
It's kind of cool,
Yeah. Like I said to you, what's up, mate? Yeah. And then the other one is that if you go, the one I just thought of, instead of redneck, they call them bogans. You're a bogan.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's like saying you're a redneck. And some of the rednecks, some of the bogans will, they'll also throw the C word around.
Yes.
Which I know you were thinking of that,
Mitch. The C word, you mean?
The C word.
The C word.
The C word.
They throw that around like.
It's
really
like a noun.
It's like a nickname.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a nickname. Like instead of saying mate, you're saying oi, what up? I can't say it on here, but they will throw it around, especially out on like the farms and stuff like that. They're completely nuts. And the Bogans will throw it around. It's more of an informal greeting, obviously, but
I like Bogan better than redneck.
Yeah, Bogan. Yeah, they call them rednecks. Yeah, stuff like that. So there's a few other ones in there, but those are probably the big ones that I encountered every day. So
did your voice change while you were down there? Did you kind of start acquiescing?
It's funny you mentioned that, John, because when I first got back, I was told that I had an Australian inflect. Although I feel like it's kind of disappeared now.
Yeah, I can't tell it.
Yeah, I thought I had it, and I was told that I had a little bit, but I don't think I have it.
You probably got to be down there for a lot longer.
Yeah, I agree. So outside of the language things a little bit that I'll still say occasionally, I unfortunately don't have my Australian accent anymore. I wish I did, but I don't.
How much traveling did you do while you were there? Like in Australia?
I did a good amount. I spent 2 weeks in Sydney, up in New South Wales, about northeast of Melbourne. I spent 2 weeks there for a work event. I spent a couple days on the Gold Coast, which is a resort town. I spent a couple days in Brisbane, which is Australia's third largest city behind Sydney and Melbourne. I drove the Great Ocean Road. I spent some time in the Red Centre, which is the Australian saying for the center of the continent, because it's very arid. It's the desert.
Well, I believe it was hit by a massive asteroid a very long time ago.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
I don't, to be honest, know the history of it.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that, but it wouldn't shock me. The center is just a giant desert. Spent time at Uluru, which is just a rock in the middle of the desert. Some of you might have heard of it, some of you might not. It's the desert, and then there's just this giant rock. It's 3,000 feet high, and it's massive.
I've seen that.
You've probably seen pictures of it. It's all over the internet.
Aliens probably put it there.
It was probably the asteroid. It's probably the one. It's just the outer shell of the asteroid.
Just stay together.
Yeah, it just split completely in half and just plopped straight down as if gravity didn't exist.
The hand of God just.
Oh my
God. Yeah. And then I spent some time up in northern Queensland, up in Cairns, Port Douglas, which is where the Great Barrier Reef is as well.
Did you go to the Great Barrier Reef?
I did. I snorkeled in the Great Barrier Reef.
That's a big one on my list.
It's probably one of the top 5 coolest things I've ever done.
Did you shoot anything?
I did not.
You ask if he shot anything?
Picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I took pictures, and I thought you meant the other kind of shot.
Me too.
Because what I was about to say was I saw.
Because I know you're a photographer. That's why I said that way.
Yeah. I took lots of pictures up in the Great Barrier Reef. I bought one of those.
Maybe you can send us a couple pictures. We'll throw them up right in the.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. I bought one of those waterproof phone cases, so that way when I went snorkeling, I could take it under and get video. So it came up pretty good. Saw plenty of alligators up there too.
What was that like? Yeah, like what do you mean, like you saw from a distance?
Don't they have the saltwater crocs up
yes,
there?
Yes, they do. That's what it is. It's all saltwater crocs. Not alligators. It's for me. It was up there. Yeah, but they do croc tours up there, so you can do like the Steve Irwin style croc tours. And mentioning Steve Irwin, rest in peace. On the tour, I was out in the Great Barrier Reef. We actually went to the island that Steve Irwin was taken to when he got stung by the stingray before he eventually passed away. So we went to one of the small islands and we saw the barn, and they had medical kits in there that they treated Steve Irwin with before they could get a heli and take him out.
They have a museum. Is that what you're saying?
Not really a museum, because it's on an island that's
pretty secluded.
That's secluded is a good way to put it. It's controlled by the environmentalist conservation group there, part of the government.
He's such a cool dude.
He was unbelievably cool, dude. He was such a cool dude.
I really have like a ton of respect, because that's like my type of thing.
That's true.
And that, like, I have so much respect for Steve Irwin. I would be doing the exact same thing if I was capable of doing it.
You're capable.
Well, I mean,
you just don't want to.
I don't think that's what it is. He's just he's like almost a hero of mine. Like, actually, I love that guy, and I really like, as horrible as it sounds, the last videos, because some of that stuff like leaked out, are like I just have so much respect and like honor for that guy. Like, it's wild. His last videos are like he didn't, because they have like chest plates that they're supposed to wear when they go in those waters, and he wouldn't wear them because he thought it hurts his brand of like being close to the animals and stuff. And then he like completely knew like he was dying like when it hit him, and he like pulled the barb out and everything right out of his chest, and it was the dude's a man. Like that's a
Yeah, he definitely lived a very interesting life. I've probably watched almost every single one of his videos at one point or in time or another. I remember staying up late and catching it, like, I don't know, after work or something. You know, it's pretty cool.
They still have Steve Irwin reruns going on down there. You can just flip through cable TV and you'll come across a news channel at midnight and they'll be showing old Steve Irwin episodes. But yeah, they up north, up in Cairns and Port Douglas, they have a lot of saltwater crocs. So you can do river tours down there, which is kind of cool. And
they're massive.
Oh, they're huge. They're huge. So I did one of those tours, and yeah, it was quite unique. It was very short, but it was quite unique.
What'd you learn about them?
Not a whole lot.
So you went down all the way to Australia and you didn't learn anything about crocodiles?
Not really. I just went to go see crocodiles.
I'm just kidding.
How often did you reference Crocodile Dundee?
Mitch, you might kill me, but I've never actually seen Crocodile Dundee.
I'm pretty sure
they do reference it.
Do they actually?
Yeah.
I was under the impression that Australians hated Crocodile Dundee.
No, I talked to my tour guide when I was on the Great Barrier Reef tour, and we were talking about Crocodile Dundee. I've never seen it. And he goes, yeah, the people here mention it, but he says that it's more the tourist, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they just roll in and start spewing Crocodile Dundee references. But Australians are a very funny group of people, so they'll make jokes out of it. But yeah, they get Crocodile Dundee references down there. That's
so
for sure.
Pretty much the kind of like the same split here, like almost a 50-50, like conservative versus like liberal split sort of type of stuff in their politics, or
they're
the way people act and whatnot.
They're much more. Australians are. When you look at it from a historical perspective, the Australian people, they're very timid. They're very kind of. They keep to themselves. They're very reserved because of the way that they were treated by the British back in the mid 1800s when Australia was brought up as a prison colony and the whole bit. So they are not very outspoken, and I actually had a couple people come up to me and go, "You're American? What the fuck's going on over there?" That sort of thing. But their political stance aligns much more British than American. So the Labour Party, they got the Labour and the Conservative, but when you think about it, the Conservative Party down in Australia is more of the Liberals, whereas the Labour is more of the what would be the Republicans.
Okay.
And I could be wrong on this, but Prime Minister Albanese, I believe, is a Liberal. I believe he's from the Conservative Party. I don't recall. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. But they are much more, they seem a little bit more liberal. They seem much more driven by logic. It's a very, very safe country down there. It's a great country, and they're very forward-thinking in the whole bit with some of the laws aimed at women and some of the laws that they're enacting towards the Aboriginals, which would be Australians, probably Native Americans, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, if you want to make a
indigenous people.
Yeah,
there you go. That's
indigenous. Thank you. Yeah, they call them the Aboriginals down there to help protect Aboriginal communities and sanctuaries and stuff like that. So they're very forward thinking in that aspect, and they definitely, for me, from what I saw, they definitely seem much more logical and driven by reason as opposed to emotion.
Oh, okay. Well,
at least in the government.
Cool.
They seem much more logical. I've met some Australians that are completely emotional, and you find that in a lot of the sports fans. But
that's different. It gets emotional.
I agree.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are footy fans, you can probably relate. But they call.
I know what they am.
Yeah. So
why don't you describe it?
Australian football. Yeah. Australian football has got to be probably the most unique sport I've ever seen in my life. It's incredibly hard to describe. It's really fun to watch. But it's just they play on a giant oval, and it's just a bunch of guys chasing the ball's basically shaped like a rugby ball. And you can kick it, you can tackle. They have what's called disposals, which is basically passing it, and it's nuts. It's hard to describe. I don't understand all the rules to it. And I was talking to my boss who's been a fan since he was 4, and he's like, "Man, I don't even understand all the rules to it." Well, I feel better.
So basically, it's kind of like the octagon, and then here's a ball, and everybody go just wreck each other.
Right. So they play on a cricket field or a cricket pitch, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
So it's essentially a giant oval circle, depending on where they play, and it's got to be 200-300 meters, probably 200 meters long on each side, and the half is probably separated by half line. So they have what's called an inside 50. It's basically a giant. Think of it as a giant 3-point arc, and they call it the inside 50. It's the resemblance for 50 meters. So it's probably about 600 yards, and it's a giant oval. And then they have 4 sticks in the ground, basically shaped as think of it as a field goal post. So they have 2 like this for the field goal, which they call you kick a goal, you get it between it. And then they have 2 on the outside, which is called the behind. And if you get it within the 2 furthest ones on the outside, you get a point. Whereas if you get it between the 2 in the middle, you get 6, and that's called a goal. And it's just it's madness.
It's more similar to rugby than it is American football.
Yes, it's very that's correct, because there are not a whole lot of stoppages. It's very free flowing. It's the best way I can think about it from an American points perspective is it's a combination of rugby and hockey.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of goes and there's no real whistles.
Yeah.
But the idea is much more rugby based, and it's really hard to describe. But you can kind of run wherever, you can cherry pick, but that's not very common.
So give us like a really short breakdown. How does the game start, and then how does it end? What does it look like on the field?
So they basically, I believe it's 12 on 12. I could be wrong. It might be 15 on 15. I don't remember. So they have the center circle, and they have what's called an opening bounce. And if you go and look up clips online, you'll see the referee, and he'll bring the ball above his head and he'll slam it down. And then you have your centers. They're called ruckmen in Australia. You got your 2 rucks that basically go up like an NBA tip-off, and then they throw it back. Or throw it forward. They just try to tap it down essentially, and then it's just the mad chase for the ball. Whoever can get it through.
That just sounds so destructive.
That's the fun of it, though.
It's so physical. Like it's incredibly physical. It's so unique to watch.
We get a lot of our not a lot. There's been some very good punters in football have come from that.
And it's actually funny because one of the guys I worked with played football at Southern Miss. He was the punter there, the kicker, because a lot of the NFL scouts go over there, or the college scouts too, go over there and be like, you want to come play football, because a big part of their game is kicking.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of the punters are Australian because of their form.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and my old boss,
they created a whole new style of punting in the NFL.
Yes.
For that,
no kidding.
when I was punting, we refer to it as a rugby style punt, and that's like a whole new style of punt that didn't exist really. Like the normal punt, you're just coming straight up, your legs coming straight up, and like you're dropping the ball right on your foot. In a rugby style punt, you're almost more of like kicking a field goal, but punting it.
Okay.
I'm having a very hard time describing it. That's the style that I punted with, was the rugby style punt, because you get a lot more distance and a lot more control out of it actually.
Huh. No idea.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, Mitch. You get a lot of punters over here, especially in the college game. I know a lot of them play in the SEC because my ex-boss, like I said, played 4 years at Southern Miss. And so he was talking about how he met a few Australians just in and throughout his games, So, but yes, you're correct. It's quite quite a unique sport, and a lot of the punters that come over there can play at a really high level because of the way that they kick the ball.
So the internship that you took.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to share any of that, or can you?
Yeah.
Or?
So I took a position with a marketing agency, a sport marketing firm based in Melbourne. My ex-boss at Syracuse University, used to live and work in Sydney, and he had some connections that he's held on to for the better part of 2 decades now. My organization was one of them, and he reached out in April and said, look, Josh would love to come down, and my boss said, yeah, we'd love to have him, and that's basically the really short version of how I got in.
But you got to see a lot of different games, right? Yeah.
Australia is probably the most sports crazed culture I've ever been to.
Oh yeah. Well, let's hear more about that.
I don't know what he did a little bit. What did you do exactly?
So I worked for a sport marketing firm, and I worked in sponsorship and events. So we would work with one of the jobs we did was at the Australian Open. We worked for a sunscreen company because they were an official sponsor of the AO, and we basically helped them activate with their products and go about the best way of doing that. So that was our biggest project. That was a multi-million-dollar budget because it was a physical activation, a physical event. The Australian Football League, we did an event for the Australian Football League too, around their season launch. And those were the 2 big ones. And then I worked on women's basketball as well. We did like when you go to Madison Square Garden and you see all like the Knicks signage and stuff, we did that.
Oh, very cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
That was one of the big events that we did too. That was a big budget as well. And so I worked for an agency that did primarily physical activations. We do social media as well, but I didn't get too much into that. And then we would do jersey sponsorships as well.
So that's big over there.
We worked with Pedigree, actually, was one of the brands. We did a footy sponsorship with Pedigree for one of the teams down there. And so we did jersey sponsorships as well. So we did all that sort of stuff. I had a lot of fun. But then we would also do entertainment events. So one of the events I worked on, it got canceled inevitably, I worked on an anniversary, a 10-year anniversary party for a sunscreen company that would have included influencers and 3D lighting and, floating decorations and all that kind of stuff on Bondi Beach in New South Wales. So we did all sorts of stuff. But my job was primarily sport, which was fun. It was right up my alley, and I had a great time doing it.
That's awesome. So you have to do what? Cricket, footy?
So I didn't get to do cricket. I got to watch cricket. Okay. So
we had a whole bit on cricket. We talked about cricket.
Dude, I'm so interested in
cricket's such a unique sport.
Yeah.
You haven't watched? I think it's episode 4.
I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen 1 through 3.
We talked quite a bit about cricket.
I mean, we don't know shit, but yeah.
Yeah, we don't know anything about it really. Yeah. I mean, I thought we did all right for not knowing anything about it.
I might be able to explain it to you. But yeah, no, I got to see some cricket, and we worked on footy events. The sports I primarily worked on were footy, which is Australian football. I worked on basketball, and then I did entertainment with tennis, and those were kind of my 3 big projects that I did. So I got to work the Australian Open, which was cool. I went to the National Rugby League Grand Final, the NRL Grand Final, which is basically Super Bowl for the NRL. It's like going to the Super Bowl. It's pretty cool. I got
to rabid fans everywhere.
Oh my gosh, yeah, screaming children. It was just me and 90,000 of my closest friends. It was unbelievable.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was great. Awesome. So I got to do that. I got to go see that. Went and saw plenty of footy because there's actually. So the Australian Football League, for those that don't know, is currently 18 teams. 10 of them are in Victoria.
Wow.
9 of them are in Melbourne City itself.
So how do you align as a fan? How do you guys?
So
do
most
that?
of it's basically like what neighborhood you're in.
Holy crap!
Wow.
There's got to be wars going on.
Well, there is. There's some intense rivalries. So
holy shit.
So my apartment, I lived in the suburb of Melbourne called Richmond.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I rooted for the Richmond Tigers. Go Tigers! But yeah, there were. If you look at a map of Melbourne, there's 9 teams, and the way that they align is kind of like suburbs or neighborhoods, whatever you want to call them. So I lived in Richmond, so I rooted for Richmond. There was Carleton, they were called the Blues. Collingwood is another, Hawthorne, so on and so forth. There's North Melbourne and all that. If you look on a map, they're all suburbs. There's 2 teams in WA, Western Australia. There's 2 teams in South Australia, I believe. Brisbane, Gold Coast, and then there's 2 in New South Wales and 2 in Queensland, and so it kind of goes like that. And then there's 10 in Victoria, so it's kind of like Victoria actually gets a state holiday for the grand final. So every year they host the grand final on a Saturday, and they get it's a bank holiday, what we would deem as a bank holiday. It's called Grand Final Eve, and they get the day off for the Friday so that everybody can essentially just have a fun 3 days. What Australians do is that's code for just get smashed for 3 days. That's basically how it works. But yeah, they have national holidays for their sports.
We should be doing that.
We should be doing that.
Definitely be doing that.
I mean, isn't the Monday after the Super Bowl practically a national holiday at this point?
I don't think
like
so.
An unofficial holiday.
I think like unofficial.
Okay. People are just not going. People just don't go to work. Yeah. Probably.
It's like the day when GTA 6 releases. Like nobody's going to go to work. It's kind of like the same thing.
Oh, is that coming out soon?
I don't know.
They announced
Probably
it.
Not.
They
have
did
announced
it, but I don't. I think it's a while.
Anyways, that's a different tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah, different tangent. But yeah, they have tons of different sports. They have. So the biggest thing about Australian sport is there's 4 codes of football, they call it. So there's Australian football, which is kind of the main one. Another footy is rugby. They have rugby league and rugby union.
Okay.
Rugby league is what New Zealanders would call a watered-down rugby union. So rugby union is the sport that the countries play against each other around the globe. It's called rugby union.
Okay.
So whether that be rugby 7s or 9s or so on and so forth.
I was gonna say there's so many different teams.
There is
rugby styles to play. Like I think it goes all the way up to freaking what is it? What's the highest?
They play what 11 on 11?
I think I was gonna say.
I don't
11,
remember.
I thought maybe 12, but
it's one of the 2.
Wow.
But there's 4 codes. So there's those 3, and then there's soccer, which is their 4th. Soccer's kind of their least popular one, but they have 4 codes of football. So in Victoria, they call Australian Football League the AFL footy. In New South Wales, they call the National Rugby League the NRL footy. In Queensland, they call the NRL footy.
How do they keep track of that then?
They
don't.
Well, they do by state.
Okay.
I used to joke with my colleagues that you guys ever seen Anchorman 2?
Yes.
You remember the final battle in Anchorman 2 when all the news stations get together and they have the kind of free-for-all?
Yeah.
I was joking with my Australian bosses that all the states should get together with the 4 codes of football and just brawl it out for who gets to call their sport footy, because it's really confusing. So, like, yeah, you're in Victoria, you're like, oh, watch some footy on Saturday night, and it's the AFL. You go up to New South Wales and you're like, oh, let's watch some footy, and they're talking about rugby league.
Yeah.
Up in Queensland, they might say, let's go watch some footy, and it'd be rugby union. It's very strange.
So how do the fans represent there? Do they wear like full on jerseys, or what do they do?
A lot of it is scarves. You see a lot of scarves.
That's interesting. That's the last thing I would have
like,
thought would have came out of your mouth.
It's like the soccer scarves. It's
I know exactly.
It's like the Barcelona Real Madrid scarves.
We sell them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Like those kind of scarves. You see a lot of people in the polos and stuff, like the Formula One style polos with the logos and stuff like that. During the week, you don't see much of it. You might see fans in hats and jackets, but you don't really see them in the Guernseys, which is their term for their kits, their jerseys. They call them Guernseys. Their kits.
That's wild.
Their shirts. Let me go.
Guernsey?
Yeah. Like Guernsey, like spelled the same way as the island, the UK island. Guernsey, Guernsey, something like that.
Something
one of the
like
two.
That,
yeah, they call them Guernseys, but it's like a kit. but it's usually scarves or hats, occasionally jackets, but they will go full gear, like face paint, the whole bit for games. Like, they're nuts.
Get your mental merch scarf on Redbubble.
We're gonna do some mental scarves.
Get some blue scarves, mental on it. But yeah, they during the week they don't do a whole lot, but when their team's playing, you bet your ass they're going in.
All right, so what's the good beer down there?
Jon,
you just asked like the worst person.
Yes,
I know, but like there's got to be like a popularity. Like you probably saw something, right?
I
Budweiser.
Probably.
Jon, I'm gonna be honest with you. I couldn't tell you.
The trans can is.
I don't think you
do they say that? I don't know.
No,
we have to add that one.
That's okay.
I couldn't tell you, Jon.
We'll just edit that whole part out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, getting good at it.
Yeah, well, he is getting good at it. I actually had my first beer in Australia. It's the one and only beer I had 6 months I was down there. We went to me and my colleague went to a local Chinese place, and he bought me a Chinese beer.
So you traveled 30 hours
to go have Chinese beer. Yes. That's basically how it went. We went to a...
Shit, we can't get rid of the rest now. That's too funny.
I'll figure out a way to
figure that one out.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a funny story. When I went to Australia, and the only beer I had was a Chinese beer in a local Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. So, but yeah, that was the only beer I had. So I do not know the answer to that question.
All right. Well, I guess we got to edit out like 10 fucking minutes now.
No, we're gonna leave that in. I think
you can leave that in.
We'll figure out a way to. I'll work around that.
Well, I figured you would have had at least a couple of,
I had, I drank more wine than I did anything else.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
tell the wine snob. Someone might want to know.
So, that's the thing is I don't. The CEO of the organization I worked for was a part owner of a local soccer team. So anytime he would go to games and he'd be kind enough to invite me, we would go sit in the chairman's box in the lounge, and yeah, it wasn't formal, but it was formal.
Fun.
It was fun,
Yeah.
and they would bring around the silver platters of white wine or whatever, and I'd have a drink there. But Jon, asking a non-drinker a wine question.
Yeah, I know. We're good. We don't have to continue with that.
But yeah, that's about the only time I drank. I mean, I would really do that, or social outings when we would go out as a group. I might have one, and that was it. I forced myself to go out the first couple weekends, and I go to the pub and watch footy, do the Australian thing, and maybe go have a drink or two, and that'd be about it. So,
did you make any new friends?
I made a few. I keep in touch with a couple of people that worked for me actually at the Australian Open. We got a staffing agency involved, and I keep in touch with a few of the men and women that worked for me, the guys and gals. But 6 months was kind of a weird time block.
Yeah.
Where just as you feel like you're settling in, you're like, oh, I'm out. See you later.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a weird spot. It took me a couple of months. I made a few good friends that were my ex-colleagues inevitably now. But yeah, I met some people, but the people I met were like in January, and it was like I was leaving 3 weeks later. And it was, it was a little bit one of those weird time slots for spending time somewhere to make real connections. But I keep in touch with a lot of the people down there. A lot of my old colleagues I still keep in touch with. And my landlord and my ex-landlord still keep in touch two and a half months later. So it's quite unique, but hey, I guess it's good. So
what's your future looking like now? What are you doing?
The future is a little bit hazy at this point. I got back February 18th, and I've been looking around applying for jobs, but nothing's come up yet. And
well, throw that resume out there right now.
Just put it right on the internet.
Just throw it right on the video.
Well, you know what? I think you gained a lot of good experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going down there, so I think it's just a matter of time.
No, I feel that way too. And as my doctor,
you can always come back to us too.
Yeah, we'll give you a once a month segment.
Oh, I meant the other one.
I knew what he meant.
Oh, the
I know
other.
what he
Oh,
meant.
that's terrible.
I'll go back.
Yeah.
I'll go
But
back.
anyway, yeah.
But yeah, no. For the time being, hockey season wrapped up a couple weeks ago. Down in Tampa, the NHL season's still going on, but the college season, which I've been fortunate enough to be involved in, has just wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a bit of traveling around Canada and around parts of Western New York, and yeah, it's only a matter of time. But as my doctor says, I mean, I'm just playing the game. It's like watching water boil. It's basically what's going on. Put out some applications and some calls in to some friends and people that I've come to know and been blessed to come to know, and we'll let you know and the whole bit. But yeah, at this point, it's like watching paint dry. So.
All right. Well, I guess we got.
That was awesome.
We'll have Josh on our next couple of. We'll have Josh doing shorts from here on out.
We're just gonna have Josh.
Just doing
shorts.
NHL.
Okay.
What would you like to do? NHL.
I mean, I can't guarantee I'm
You're
going to
now
a
an
playoff
employee.
game.
You're an
Oh
employee.
boy, I'm an employee now.
Yeah.
I got hired.
You don't get paid. There's no W-2.
It's fine with me. What do you want me to do?
Well, we don't know anything about NHL.
We don't know anything about NHL.
That's all you.
Okay.
But
So,
this is a really good one.
Yeah.
I really like this one. This is a lot of fun. This episode.
Yeah.
I agree.
No
Thank
doubt
you, guys.
about it.
So thank you for coming on. We
Thank you
really
for having me.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously, it was awesome. Good time.
It was
Yeah.
great to see you guys
Yeah.
again. It's
Yeah.
been 9 months since Safania, so it's great
You
to
can
see
see
you
us
again.
again when you come on. Another couple episodes.
Absolutely.
Not before then, though. I don't want to see you any
Yeah.
more time.
Yeah. It's too
That's
much,
fine.
really. Yeah.
That's fine.
Anyway, we'll see everybody next week.
All right.
And
Thanks, everybody.
thank you for watching and listening.